Good afternoon and welcome to this Policy Committee, Community Parks and Leisure this afternoon. The meeting is open to the public and of course it's being webcast as well. Welcome to the members of the public who are here today. We have received a petition from one member of the public and several questions from two groups from the public. Please can I request that mobile telephones and other such equipment are switched to silent mode so they do not disturb the conduct of the meeting. I'm pleased to say that there is no fire test planned for today, and if there is an emergency evacuation, please take instruction from the Town Hall staff. The assembly point is in Tudor Square. But I now ask members of the committee to introduce themselves, and because we have so many officers here today, can I suggest that you introduce yourself when you speak? Thank you.
Sue Alston, Councillor in Fulwood.
Alan Hooper, Councillor for West Ecclesfield Ward.
Marion Elliott, Green Councillor for Gleadys Valley.
Bernard Little, Councillor for Walkley.
Mary Lee, Councillor for Darnell Ward.
Fran Belbin, Councillor for Firth Park Ward, substituting for, I've forgotten who, Paul Wood.
Peter Price, Councillor for Shire Green Brightside.
Karen McGowan, Councillor for Burley Ward.
Thank you. We have two apologies for absence today. Councillor Tony Downing and Councillor Mary Lee will be substituting for him, and Councillor Paul Wood and Councillor Fran Belbin will be substituting for him. On item 3, there is a closed part of the report at item 10 in the agenda, which is not available to the public and press because it contains exempt information described in paragraph 3 of Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972, as amended, relating to financial and business affairs. The committee are therefore asked to formally exclude the public and press for discussions on this item to allow for consideration of sensitive information. For that reason, I'm actually going to move item 10 in its entirety to the end of the committee meeting so that we're not excluding people and then asking them to come back in. Item 4, declarations of interest. Does anybody have declarations they wish to make public? I'll take that as a no. Item 5 is the minutes of the previous meeting. I'll read the page numbers, and if you have any questions or points you want to raise, please put your hand up or attract my attention. Page 11. Councillor Little.
Yes, there's an item there that's on the first page. Sorry, I need to just get it. Yeah, item 5, public questions and petition. Says Andy Chaplin attended the committee and asked the following questions. It's very difficult to see from looking at the minutes actually what this refers to. I feel that in the interest of getting public engagement, it would be good that the minutes actually made some reference to what this is actually about, rather than having to read through the minutes further on, where if you've got some insight, you might be able to work out what it is. But I think for the ordinary member of the public, it's not clear. So I'm just raising that as an issue, really.
Thank you. Thank you, Bernard. I think you make a valid point, and we will adjust the minutes accordingly.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. It'll go back to Democratic Services for final ratification. Page 12. Page 13. Page 14. Page 15. And the minutes as a whole. Thank you. Item 6 is public questions and petitions. As I said, we have one petition and two questions, or two questioner groups. I shall take the petition first. And this was a petition from Rebecca Clough. Would you like to read? Who isn't here, so I shall ask the officer to read her question.
This is an e-petition on safe youth spaces. We, the undersigned, petition the council to put more funding into safe youth spaces, as there has been an increase in youth crime and many young people do not feel as if they have a safe place. We believe that more youth spaces will lead to less youth crime and an increase in young people feeling safe and even getting support for issues including mental health. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Sheffield City Council Community Youth Services has increased youth provision in the last year since August 2021. We have developed youth provision both centre-based and street-based to cover all 28 wards in the city, some more than one session per week. This development is ever increasing, and we have seen 5 street-based youth sessions convert into centre-based youth provisions in partnership with local community organisations. We have also increased our youth activity offer to include full and meaningful school holiday programmes, taking young people on trips and visits, including weekend residentials. This year, one activity saw 120 young people attend a trip to Flamingo Land alone. We have delivered 2 consecutive Dark Nights programmes, which have been described by South Yorkshire Police as the most beneficial ever seen, seeing a significant decrease in youth-related antisocial behaviour in this space of time. We have recently undertaken a restructure of our community youth services, which intend to reduce management structures and increase frontline roles that support young people, which includes our community youth prevention roles, which support young people in one-to-one in early intervention work, which can include emotional and mental wellbeing skills and strategies. Sheffield City Council has also just launched a Universal Youth Work Grant to support grassroots community organisations to apply for up to 20,000 to develop more universal community youth sessions for young people. The Council is also in the process of preparing a bid for the National Youth Investment Fund to apply for significant funding that can create, develop or regenerate our youth buildings, ensuring that they are better equipped, better placed and more modern and relevant for young people and communities. Alongside all this work, we are also now actively developing youth consultation to better understand from the voice of young residents what young people's expectations are of youth services providers in Sheffield. Thank you. We shall now go on to questions. We have 2 questioner groups. The first is Mr. Andy Kershaw. I note also, before you start, Andy, you asked 2 further questions this morning, significantly past the deadline, so please don't ask those today. What I will say, looking at the content, I recognise that there's no point, or it's defeating to put it to the next committee meeting, so we will take them up and address them as soon as we can. Please ask your questions. Would you like to ask some more at once, please? Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. I'll stand if it's okay. As many of you know, on the 2nd of November, we presented an 11,000 signature petition to this council, demanding that the Rose Garden Cafe in Graves Park be repaired and reinstated. I'm pleased to say that working with Parks and Countryside, that scaffolding has gone up and propping up has started, and a new survey will begin, taking into account the roof timbers, which were never looked at in previous surveys, to assess the scale of the challenge in terms of the work needed doing and the funding required that is going to be needed to reopen the cafe. Meanwhile, Parks and Countryside are discussing with the operators the prospect of reopening it on a very limited basis. So I want to thank you for your support, particularly yours, Chair. We had a town hall lobby and we had a lot of members of our campaign group in this chamber, and we are moving forward on it. But I just want to remind the Council that the abrupt closure on the 27th of July was an absolute...
Excuse me, Andy. We're very tight on time.
Yes, I'm going to come to the questions.
Can you come to your questions, please?
I'm taking the opportunity to remind you, Chair, that the abrupt closure on the 27th of July made 12 staff redundant, and it's 110 days, and I've promised every member of our campaign and every one of those 11,000 signatories, I will remind this council that 12 staff remain unemployed after 110 days, because this council has not done any work on that cafe. And I get to the questions by saying that it's given rise to a number of wider points about how how the Parks and Countryside Service communicates with community groups such as our campaign and the established friends groups. And I'm asking the committee, would you please undertake an urgent review into how the council engages with such groups, and in particular where such decisions as the one to close the Rose Garden Cafe with 15 minutes notice to the staff are taken and handled. I'd like to see no repetition of that ever again by this council. Question 2, I note that the committee is responsible for community development and voluntary and community sector liaison and engagement. In what way does the committee understand that this is undertaken in parks and green spaces in the city in any meaningful way? And one thing that the Rose Garden Cafe threw up was that it was an important social hub and meeting place for many, many people, not just walkers and visitors and park users, but from all over Sheffield and South Yorkshire and beyond. And parks are huge green meeting spaces for people. That's been acknowledged. And the importance of social contact during and following COVID-19, the cafe remained open closed just for 3 months during the pandemic and reopened on a very limited way. And it's an important place for people to meet. What role does the committee see as its role in relation to promoting social contact and provision of social hubs or meeting places, such as the Rose Garden Cafe and other buildings in Sheffield? And the other thing, Chair, is this. Given the alarming and very concerning report from the Director of Operational Services to last Monday's Finance Subcommittee regarding the parlous state of the 182 council and community buildings, including, it says in that report, some of our most historic and iconic buildings, what role does this committee propose to have in engaging with us as citizens and the groups interested to open up meaningful dialogue to ensure the involvement of citizens affected by the potential decisions contemplated in this report? And those are the 3 questions. I take it the other 4 questions you're going to answer in writing, are you?
Please continue with your questions.
Okay. We're asking for a list of all the 182 buildings mentioned in the Finance Subcommittee of the 7th of November, and we're very interested to know how many buildings are in parks and countryside, the Parks and Countryside portfolio. Supply a separate list of buildings mentioned as critical and essential, needing this £48 million immediately. We need to know, and we demand to know as citizens, what buildings are affected by this and their potential fate. And finally, Chair, in relation to the questions above, please send us that list so that we can work with Parks and Countryside in addressing some of the many, many years of long neglect of these buildings and put an end to this sorry saga over the Rose Garden Cafe in Graves Park. Thank you.
Thank you very much for those important questions. For all of them, I intend to supply written answers, which will become part of the minutes of this meeting, will be available to members of the public through the website. Thank you very much. Our next questioner is Mr. Booth, Michael Booth.
Okay, right, I'll sit down. Okay.
Good afternoon, Mr. Booth. Welcome to our committee. Thank you for your questions. Will it be just yourself speaking today, or your colleagues just here to provide some support?
I think it'll just be me today.
Absolutely fine. What I would propose to do, if your questions are shorter than previous ones, but still highly relevant, if you ask the first question, then I'll give you an answer, and we'll work it through that way, if that's okay. So question 1, please.
Can I just give you a quick background of who we are? You know, we're the Sheffield Allotment Federation. We represent every allotment in Sheffield, not just council but private. We've got to the point with the council, the officers was requesting a 9.4% increase in the rent. Okay, we've been to the meetings, and the allotment officers have put out a survey that was given 3 options. The 3 options were a 9.4% increase in the rents, and we keep the same level of service from the allotment office. The second option was a reduced rate of increase, but they will be reducing significantly the amount of service we get from the office. The third one is freeze it and just do the bare essentials, safety-wise, etc. We've spoken...
Excuse me, Mr. Booth, we actually have got this coming to the committee this afternoon. So could you please just concentrate on your questions?
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm just trying to get... I know it's coming to the committee this afternoon. I just wanted to put this... We put this towards us members, and basically, virtually everybody turns around and says, what service do we get? This goes up every year and nothing ever improves. So these are the quick 4 questions that, like I say, we're in a unique situation because we're self-financing. We'd like to ask you the following questions. The allotment office has paid for a private company to do a rent survey. Then, undemocratically, they ignore the results of the survey. Right? The survey said no increase, and we'll put up with the service, what we've got at the moment. But they published the results, and they've taken the least popular result from there, which has increased the rents by 5.5%. The majority voted for no increase at all. Second question.
So I'm quite happy to answer that one. As I understand it, the survey was undertaken by Sheffield City Council's Parks and Countryside team on Citizen Space, an online platform widely used by the council for consulting with communities. So I'm aware, no private company was involved. Okay, thank you. In response to the question regarding tenants' preferences about rent increases, 56.78% of respondents were in favour of some degree of rent increase. We have therefore responded to that feedback and are proposing a below inflation increase of 5.5%.
I totally understand what you're saying there, that this is the lowest option. Yeah. The officers, right?
Sorry, can we get on to question 2, please? You ask a question, I give an answer. Yeah, well, you have further opportunities to ask questions at further committee meetings if you're not happy.
Okay, then. Second option, the allotment office is mainly manned by part-time workers. We're getting a poor service, like I say. We're not getting the continuity of full-time workers. I go home on a Wednesday and I come back on a Monday. There's still the work on the desk we're doing, plus another 4 days. People are constantly ringing the office. They are not getting nobody picking up the phones. Most people we've spoken to is, why can't it be manned by full-time officers? Right, and we find that we think this would give us a lot better service.
Thank you. Sheffield City Council employees have a statutory right to request flexible working. The council understands that the ability to work flexibly allows employees to have a better work-life balance and realise their potential. Collectively, our officers provide service across the full working week during office hours and outside office hours and emergencies where possible. This support includes site visits and inspections and administration support. The main preliminary books of contact, the email inbox and the telephone number of 0114 2500 500 of staff throughout the week. Urgent matters which cannot wait until the relevant officer is available are always dealt with promptly. The results of our customer satisfaction survey conducted in 2018 indicate that overall customers are happy with the service. Take your next question, please.
That's the same answer we keep getting, but it's not true. Okay, it really isn't. This was one of Michael's, why do some tenants subsidise other tenants on the allotment?
Okay. As a council, we want to ensure that as many people as possible are able to access allotments. We offer concessions to support those in receipt of certain benefits to enjoy the same opportunities as those who are not.
And just a last simple question, who's setting policy for the allotments? Is the allotment office or the councillors?
Okay. The governance and decision-making process will vary. However, the allotment advisory group is consulted on policy changes and ongoing areas of work. This is attended and chaired by councillors with representatives from allotment societies and the Allotment Federation. It is the first point of contact for the allotment office for all areas of work, including the review of policies, target setting for the year, and steer on the spending priorities for site improvements. Proposals are shared for discussion and advisory input. In the last year, as part of a review of our overall allotment strategy, the Allotment Advisory Group members have been fully involved in working groups to enable a collaborative review of our policies and handbook. This engagement has been greatly appreciated. This will continue over the winter with additional engagement with the wider allotment community. Once the consultation is completed and drafts of all the new policies are prepared, councillors will take a decision whether these are adopted. These answers will become part of the minutes of this meeting and will be published on the website, and therefore they form a written response. What I would say is that you come across as somebody who's not overly satisfied with the answers. That's you're perfectly entitled to. Can I suggest that perhaps we set up a separate meeting?
I mean, that will be fantastic. I mean, we are banging us. The result, the answers you've just given us are the exact answers we get every single time. Right? We are trying to change things. We're trying to make things better. We are trying to work with the office. But we've told them to use that, but it doesn't matter. Whenever, it's like with this rent increase, no matter what happens, no matter what is said, they're doing what they want. You know, and that is so. But set up another meeting would be fantastic where we can speak to somebody. Yeah.
To be fair to the officers, they're implementing the policies that are set. But I'm quite happy to set a plan. Thank you very much. Item 7 on the agenda is work programme.
I'd like to draw the committee's attention to the work programme, which is set out from page 17. So this is item 7. It starts on page 17. If you leaf over to page 18, at the top, there are 3 recommendations which we'd just ask the committee to agree. If you look on page 19, under section 2.2, it just outlines the training and skills development that's been happening so far. Leafing over to page 20, in appendix 1 of the work programme, there are the proposed additions and amendments to the work programme since the last meeting. So from there that you can see that the Asylum Dispersal grants, which will be discussed today, and there are 2 items on there which have been removed, and the reasons for that are in the note on the side. And then moving through onto appendix 3, which is outlined on page 21 and beyond, you can see the work programme moving forwards. Right at the end of there, on page 27, there are a set of items that are to be allocated to future meetings, and these are currently being discussed and put together. For future meetings, those items should be placed or will be allocated for future work programmes. So that's everything on the work programme. We would ask the committee to agree those recommendations, please. So I will pass back to the chair. Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions? Yes, Councillor.
Yeah, it's just site visits. I just wondered if we could be given options next time. It was just a date proposed, and I don't know how many people were able to make it. I wasn't, but it would have been nice to have a few dates and then seen if the majority what was favourable. It was like accept it or not. So I would have really liked to have done that, but I just couldn't because of work. So it would be nice to get several dates. Thank you.
Thank you, that's a good point, yeah. Any other questions? I can't see anybody, so can we agree that? I'll take silence as an agreement. Yeah, thank you very much. Item 8 is a verbal update on the Family Hub and Start for Life programme.
My name's Helen Lomas. I'm Service Manager, currently leading the Family Hub and Start for Life programme in communities. And I just wanted to spend a couple of minutes really, it's not going to be long, just giving you that update really about where we're at in Sheffield and what's the future planning and where we go from here. Just to remind everybody on the next slide what family hubs are. So next slide please, thank you. For us in Sheffield it's not new. We have family centres and we have continued to provide that community support as we move forward over the years. But what Sheffield is hoping to achieve is that the family hub model builds on what we have already, and also what we've learnt, what local councils and professionals have learnt, and what families have told us all about how to give them that very best support at the earliest opportunity and the support that they deserve. And this is summarised in the 3 principles and the characteristics and what define family hubs. And those are access, connections and relationships. Looking at access, we know how crucial it is that families know where to go for support and that we make it as easy as possible for them to find help when they need it. Family hubs will bring together services to support families from conception all the way to being young people. And so, we can hopefully look at responding to the needs of the whole family. They will create a clear access point and a relationship with services that does not end at children and helps them to grow older. Family hubs allow for both physical and virtual services to be brought under one banner, around which communications and outreach can be built, building awareness and trust among families. Over the last 3 years, we have seen the value of online services and virtual access points, and these are integral to the Family Hub model. But we know that access to face-to-face services remains as crucial as ever, and so the Family Hub buildings will remain at the heart of communities. The next slide just tells you a little bit about the Start for Life services. And as part of that Family Hub development, we will be expected to have that Start for Life offer. And as you can see, the bullet points tells us about that seamless support for families and the vision that we bring key themes together, working with our midwifery, health visiting colleagues. Start for Life services are services that we offer every family universally from that pregnancy right through to the age of 5. And Start for Life services will be a combination of services within those family hubs and out of those family hubs in the communities and outreach across the city. One of the biggest things that the DFE and the Department of Health and Social Care are telling us is that parental participation in this programme is vital. And as a parent myself, many years ago, being involved in family programmes as they were then, you know, it's understanding about empowering and building resilience for communities in the future to make sure that we can get that direction of planning the right way at the right time for families to access that early help. So the next slide just gives you a little bit of an idea of what our next steps are and our co-design really as to what we want to do next. We're right at the beginning of this proposal, and we're right at the beginning of this programme. So our next steps really are about bringing all of this together. So how do we develop ideas to enhance what Sheffield already has? How do we integrate together, not only across our internal directorates in the council, but out in communities to make sure that families' needs are met? And how do we plan in each locality around the identified local needs? We know that Sheffield's localities are very different, but what we want to do is to make sure that we deliver the right specific services in the right areas. So how are we going to do that? We know what budgets we've got to plan against, and I believe that this was put forward prior for consideration and for your information. So I'm not going to go over the percentages of what's available across the city. But what we do know is that we have to work together with communities and with organisations out there to look at how we can best use this funding to make sure that we get as much emphasis and impact as possible. So the next slide talks about the planning timeline, and we know now, what do we know now? We know that we are signed up as one of the 75 local authorities. We've had that authorisation, we've signed our memorandum of understanding as we move forward, and we know that now we have that delivery plan to submit by December 2023. What we also know is that we're working alongside other strategic reviews around early help and the early years strategy. So we're not alone in delivering and developing this programme. We're looking at co-designing the service and the development with families and with communities. What we also know is that there will be new marketing, and we will have that launch towards our timeline in May 2023, where we will be expected to publish that offer. And the launch officially will, for us in Sheffield, we will launch our family hubs and Start for Life programme in May 2023 next year. So just to give you an outline of where we get to May, what we're going to be doing, we know between October and November, so where we're at now, we know that we're going to be receiving that 50% of year one funding. We know that we need to recruit to enhance the capacity to deliver the expectations on what DfE are asking us to do. The biggest thing for me is that I know that we will have to, and we will be doing what we call in that local needs assessment, so that we're finding out actually what is out there in communities already. You know, what toddler provisions in High Green, what toddler group happens over in Woodhouse. We need to find out what already is there so that we're not duplicating. And we need to look at the delivery plan and how we, you know, meet the needs of what the expectations are. We need to submit that delivery plan, and we need to formalise how the stakeholder agreement and the process that we have. Any adaptations to buildings, you know, this funding is not about capital buildings, it's about looking at what we have now. So we have 7 family centres that are registered family centres, and we have outreach buildings that we work also from in the communities. So it's about looking at how we can enhance that and make sure that we work across the communities to have those ongoing spaces to welcome families into. And then once we have that submission, that's when we start to plan and deliver what our communities agree. There will be lots and lots of communication with families out there and with communities themselves. We will formalise that governance, and we will look at how we start to begin to be able to publish that offer and deliver that offer in Sheffield. And then, as I've said, hopefully by May 2023, we will be in a position for Sheffield to launch officially that we have a family hub and a Start for Life programme. So the areas of focus on the last slide really are just for us to think about, you know, how do we make that happen? What's the engagement that's needed? How do we survey families' needs? How do we ask them what they want to see and what they want to do? And, you know, as an internal service, we have a number of ideas. As an internal service already, we have a really good parental participation. We have lots of parents groups where we will be able to go out and ask parents what they are wanting to see in the future. But we need to go further. We need to enhance that and come out with service consultation. And we need to enable that we're delivering at the right time, so that we need to know that Family Hub and Start for Life programme is actually true early help service. It's a true universal or targeted service that everybody within communities can access. So you don't have to have that specialist service or that specialist need. It's about every family knowing where the right place is and getting that service at the right time. And for us as well, for us moving forward, it's about being able to focus on that publicity and shout about what these family centres are or what these family hubs will become.
Thank you very much, Helen. One thing, there's a lot of information on there. Would it be possible, I'm sure the members would benefit from having a copy of that presentation and get them sent out? I've got a number of people. I've noted Peter, Mary, Councillor Wilson.
Thank you. Yeah. Firstly, just to reiterate what the Chair said, I can't read that, so I'm having to twist around to read that. So the screens, just forget they exist, and if we can have it in paper, it'd be a lot better. I just feel we've been here before, we're going round in circles. I don't think there's any doubt that people know that this sort of service is of value and vitally important, and yes, we must move on with it as quickly as we can, use whatever funding we've got. I hope we will take into account distance for people to travel, because I know that some people under the Sure Start Centre system, which is, you know, the old name for these things, we're having to travel miles or 2 or 3 buses to get to their so-called local centre. So I hope that's on your list of things to consider. I just felt as you were going through it, it was quite sort of reinventing the wheel. We must already have a lot of information in the past about what people want, what people appreciate, what was used well in the past, what's not been used well. And really we should be using that and moving on so we can actually move on quicker.
Thanks. Yeah, I think you're right. You know, we do have lots of information about what's worked well. We've also have lots of information about even better if from parents that we've got our current services. This is a new programme, and yes, you're very right. We have been here before with Sure Start centres and with family centres moving forward. I think this is very different in the emphasis of what the government's asking us to spend our money on. It's very much looking at the impact of babies born in lockdown. It's very much looking at the impact around perinatal mental health. But it's given us the emphasis to work with the universal services and the lowest of level of help to try and emphasise on that trigger at that stage to stop, hopefully, that escalation of need as we move forward. So we've got lots of specialised support in Sheffield. We've got lots of targeted support. What we need to emphasise this funding and this programme about is to look at the lowest of level in the early help. And to answer your question about being accessible for communities, you know, this is one of the reasons why we want to look at the funding out in communities so that we can reach out to those people that don't have to catch 2 buses to get to the hub, and so that we can emphasise where accessible spaces are in communities and in reach, walkable distance or pram pushing distance as we call it. And hopefully by consulting with parents we can start to achieve that again within communities.
Just very briefly, if you talk to the LAC officers, they have lists of all community buildings across the city. That'll save you a lot of time.
Thank you. And they will be very much part of our partnership and our local needs assessment. Thanks for that.
Thank you. Peter.
Come back, Tony Blair, all is forgiven. It's Sure Start, isn't it? Again, let's hope we can learn from the mistakes of Sure Start. Have you any idea, roughly, how many hubs we might have across the city? Because it seems to me a massive area to cover to try to repeat what Sure Start tried to do.
So, yes, we have 7 hubs already that are
I know.
existing as family centres. This funding doesn't give us the ability to have any more hubs. It gives us the ability to work with what we have, but look at actually how we reach out in communities and look at existing services and ensure that families have that Start for Life offer, that offer of service through their midwife, through the health visitor, or out there in the community through organisations. I think you're right. You know, I was a parent in a long time ago, 23 years ago, as I began to access services through Sure Start in Parson Cross. And I was a parent who got involved. I was one of those parents that then took up training and had that workforce development and delivery. And I'm really passionate and pleased to say that I'm now leading a programme to look at that. And, you know, it's about looking at what we've learned from that. And, you know, the funding is not massive. It's not a lot of money, but it's what we do with it and how we move that forward for communities, I think.
So are we looking for extra bill or community to come up with ideas, or are we being the proactive people who's taking this forward?
I think we've got to be proactive and look at what we've got already. I think we've got to be proactive and look at what families want and what they already access in each of the areas of the city. And those are very different. So what families access in Page Hall and Fir Vale and Shire Green are very different to what families access over in High Green or Ecclesfield. But it's about getting that mix right, which is where the important part of that partnership working in each of the localities will help and develop what we need for the future.
Thank you. Councillor Little. Sorry, Councillor Lee.
Thank you. And I know you come to the LAC Chairs meeting, so that was really good. So I've had this presentation, myself and Ellen, before, but we've asked you to, if you could come to each individual LAC committee, their informal committee, to talk about what's happening in their areas. So that would be good if you could do that one. But my question is about, it's about best start and doing your very best, the very best for young children and their families, so they have the best start in life. But life goes on after, you know, this is, obviously you meet a lot of new parents and doing a lot of work with very early years children. I'm concerned about what goes on after the age of 5 when people attend school, when children attend school, and are you doing enough, do you think, or what do you do to ensure that the importance of attendance, the importance of participation is really discussed with parents? I know that some parents in the city absolutely ensure that their children go to school every day and do what they have to do, but there's some vulnerable families who may be not in that kind of position. What work do you do to ensure that our children are attending school, fully participating in school, till the age of, beyond junior school and on to secondary school?
So the answer for me there is that we work collaboratively with our colleagues in other directorates. So we work really closely with children and families who offer that family help for those families 5 to 19 plus. So they offer that multi-agency support and that intervention, that family intervention, if children are struggling with regards to attendance, inclusion and family needs. So we work really closely with our Children and Families Directorate. We also work really closely with our Education and Skills Directorate that offer that attendance and inclusion support across the city for schools. And, you know, that is something, again, as these partnerships develop, that we will maintain that work with our colleagues and we will look at actually what those needs are. You know, if we need to offer an advice session in a family hub in the future, not in a school, then, you know, we can look at developing that and moving that forward. But from my service, it is about that collaboration and that co-design and working together with our other directorates to make sure that we meet families' needs, whether they're not pre-birth or whether they're coming up to 19 to 25.
I think it's great that you collaborate and you work with those services. That's fantastic. But just in that period of 0 to 5 where you've got parents for the first time, some absolutely will understand absolutely the importance of education and getting the kids to school, but some people maybe, particularly new people to the country who are not used to the system, what specific work do you do? Because it's really important that this is embedded in early years, very early years, the importance of education. What do you do to ensure that to ensure that families are really understand the absolute necessity to get their kids to school and fully participate in education? The practical stuff, that is what I'm asking.
Thanks. Yeah, I understand. So in Sheffield, we've got a really robust parenting hub, which is part of the focus of the Start for Life offer. And some of the funding is really restricted to what we can deliver on, and that is about exactly what you've said. It's about ensuring that parents are aware of the importance of school readiness and the importance of home learning environments and the importance of how they work as a family unit to ensure that children are ready for school. The Parenting Hub will receive some of the funding that comes from Department of Health and Social Care to enhance that. So it's really quite prescriptive as to what they've got, they need to be doing in the delivery plan. And part of that will be about enabling parents to enhance their understanding of services and also looking at parenting, looking at parental conflict, looking at how that can impact on your family moving forward and giving them the tools that they need, hopefully, for when their child and their family are ready, you know, so the children are ready for school.
Councillor Little.
Thank you for your presentation. I'm aware that this group, these mothers are often at the bottom of the heap as it regards inequality and poverty, which they must be suffering hugely from at the moment. So how is your service engaging with the welcoming spaces, which is part of the City Council's response to the cost of living crisis?
So as a service, we've welcomed, we've opened up our current family centres to become that welcome place. So we're working with the cost of living team to emphasise that any of the family centres you can access and you can get that support and information, and you can be signposted to the right service. If they access a family centre looking for support around food bank, for example, we can signpost them to the nearest food bank. Our business support, our welcome people on the reception areas are vital to make sure that, you know, all families or the communities themselves, it could be a grandparent that's accessing the reception area, it could be a single person that's accessing that area. Is for us at the minute, we're looking at how we can train and develop those receptionists to be trained to enable them to press the right button to get that service and signpost that person to the right service. But what we're also doing is we're opening up some welcome spaces within the family centres at the moment to try and assess actually the need of the communities and are people walking through the door to access that welcome warm space. And if they are, we'll monitor that, and we will work with other council services to look at how we can best meet their needs.
Thank you for your answer. I feel that the issue is that we're talking about how people within pram pushing distance of somewhere of help, and certainly people during this cost of living crisis aren't going to be able to walk that far, or very, very few. And I'm just wondering if, you know, what in practice are you going to be doing, linking in with these welcoming hubs that the council are actually set up, so that there can be some connection between those hubs and the services that you provide, because, you know, this is the reality that young families face.
Yeah, I think we will be obviously looking at collaboration and looking at connectively working together to identify where those spaces are in communities, and I think that's a big part of the local needs assessment that we will be doing to start to develop the delivery planning stage. So I think, yeah, we will take that on board. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Hooper.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah. I would agree with Peter, Councillor Price, regarding this. It's historical, the Sure Start, for some 20 years probably, as you say, with Tony Blair. It was recognised again by Jonathan Crossley-Holland, Education Director here, of the benefits of 0 to 5, giving them the start, the Sure Start when they go to school. And the attainment and low attainment of some Sheffield schools was put down to the lack of Sure Start. We had 15 centres, which has been reduced down to 7. Sheffield's a massive area to cover, And I don't think we're providing a universal service because people can't get to the centres. So they're having to travel on 1, 2 buses or walk. So I would like you to have a look at the outlying areas, it may be throughout the city, of how people get to a centre, and especially with the buses as they are and being reduced even further, it's really difficult. And I do believe that a lot of these mums and young children are isolated. Thank you, Chair.
Just to respond to that, Alan, I think, you know, we will very much be looking again at that at the local needs assessment, and we will be speaking to families to look at how they can access services in the area that they live in and not having to catch those buses. The family hubs at the moment in each of the localities, they have, the statistics show us that we have a really good service from a community midwifery universal service, but I get where you're coming from about people and parents that, you know, have to catch buses to that, and that's exactly what we're going to be looking at. Our midwifery colleagues and health visitor colleagues offer services out of the current family centres, which is a good start in Sheffield, but I think we just need to look at how we can start to accommodate that further. I'll take that on board, thank you.
Thank you very much. Again, thank you for a good presentation and some great questions. I think that's been very useful. Peter.
Just to clarify in my own mind, we have a hub in Firth Park, for instance, which is very successful. Now, if Winterbank Village Hall wants to set up something for their under 5, would they, in this new system, be able to contact and get a proper link?
Yes, that's your answer, and we want people in Winterbank to be part of the Family Hub and Start for Life partnership meetings, which are the meetings that our local area committees will be involved in, meetings that parents will be involved in, meetings that the internal people that work in those areas will be involved in. And so we very much would want Winterbank, Shire Green, want to come in and look at actually what those local needs are in the area.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Our next item is item 9, but before I invite the officers to come up, I just say that I'm made aware that there are members of the public who are here for item 13, and therefore, after item 9, I propose to have item 13. Item 9 is an asylum dispersal grant.
Afternoon, everybody.
Could you introduce yourselves, please, when you speak?
Sorry, Richard.
Could you introduce yourself for the benefit of people on the webcam?
Afternoon, everybody. I'm Jason Siddall. I'm the head of communities, and amongst my responsibilities, I've got responsibility for asylum migration.
I'm Beth Storm. I work for Jason in communities, and contrary to my sign, I am the strategic lead for asylum and migration. Good afternoon, everyone.
Okay. So hopefully you've had a chance to read the paper that was sent with the agenda items. I'll go over briefly though the reason for this presentation and the ask of the committee. If you've not read it, I'll give you some background. The government have made provision for an asylum dispersal grant to be paid to local authorities, along with additional funding to recognise the existing contribution and long-standing support of local authorities accommodating asylum seekers. So the purpose of the report is to seek endorsement by the committee of the proposed allocation of funding from the grant to support the development of capacity to promote strong city leadership, a stepping stone towards growth within the voluntary sector, and strategic work to ensure a good quality, consistent and effective response to those seeking asylum and refugee status in the city. The grant essentially, without going through the full grant agreement, which some of that is contained in the more detailed documents that have been provided, is essentially to implement and bolster services for this particular cohort in the city. So what is the recommendation? So that the Communities, Parks and Leisure Committee endorses the use of the dispersal grant and asylum dispersal funding to be utilised as detailed in this report. And the purpose will be to provide funding for the continuation of the current community's asylum and migration team function, which will need to continue beyond March 23. And just to give a little bit of a brief explanation, that is the staffing function. So currently we have only got a very small team managing this area of work, and that is a temporary team, and the funding expires for that team March 23. So we are proposing in the report that some of the grant funding that we've received from the government is used to fund that staff team for the next couple of years. We want to support identified partners to provide strategically important and good quality services which are known to benefit those seeking asylum and sanctuary in the city. And what we also want to do is provide an open grant pot for bids from a broad range of organisations working for the benefit of the asylum and refugee community. So just to give you a little bit more background, the government gave Sheffield a one-off thank you payment of £250 for each asylum seeker resident in dispersed initial or contingency accommodation on March 27th, 2022. So a calculation was done on that particular day where the government worked with us to look at the number of asylum seekers in the city in that type of accommodation at that point in time. And the data indicated at that time that we got 1,200 asylum seekers living in dispersed and contingency accommodation in Sheffield, and that equated to a receipt for the city of £300,000, and that money has been received from the government. So during the financial year 22-23 this year, the Home Office will also make a single payment of £3,500 to local authorities for each new dispersal bed space created between 28th of March 22 and 31st of March 23. And this payment is for dispersal accommodation and initial accommodation. Other new contingency sites, e.g. new hotels or other accommodation in this category are not covered by this payment, so it doesn't cover hotel arrangements. So under this scheme, Sheffield has already received £35,000 for Q1 of this financial year. And if we assume full occupancy during the financial year and the opening of Regency House, which is new contingency accommodation in the city with 92 bed spaces, this will result in a further receipt of £322,000 from the Home Office. So if we add all of that up, in this financial year, the council will receive £657,000 of asylum dispersal funding. Now, at that point, it has to be noted that this is a moving picture, so that actually could go up, depending on the amount of bed space that is occupied in the city. But for the purpose of this report, that was the information, obviously, that we held at the time of writing the report. Okay, so what's been asked is that the committee endorse the following recommendations. So the current financial arrangements for the staffing, which I talked about before, no resources is currently allocated after March 23, so we're asking the committee to endorse the recommendation that the staffing is funded. And recommendation 2 is for us to fund strategic partners and create an open grant pot in the city for voluntary sector organisations to bid into, and those organisations will clearly be organisations that are supporting asylum seekers in the city. We don't currently have a pot of money to do this, so we're asking the committee to endorse that approach in terms of the strategy for spending the money. There are far more details in the actual report itself in terms of the actual numbers and breakdown of the numbers, but I can answer any questions about that. So I guess, Chair, it's if anybody's got any questions.
Thank you very much. The first one I see is from Councillor McGum.
Yeah, thank you, Jason. I just wanted some reassurance because you said it's not about putting people in hotels, which I totally agree with. But I know we've had petitions before in council where people have been in poor quality accommodation, poor hotels. Does this mean about, I don't know if we've got any of them left, I hope we haven't, but if we have, does this mean that those people will be moved into this new accommodation? I just want a reassurance that we're not, you know, that we've not got people in hotels.
Yeah. but we have got people in hotels currently in the city. It's not the council that decide that or make that decision. The Home Office made that decision. They will consult with the council on using hotels in the city. So if they identify a new hotel that they want to use, they will let us know about that and consult with us on that. But ultimately, the arrangement is not with the City Council, it's with the Home Office and the actual hotel owner. So, yeah, we got an opportunity to discuss that and I guess if we've got any concerns, raise those concerns about its location or whatever. That might be all support that might be provided to the cohort in the hotel, but ultimately the City Council don't make the decision. It's the Home Office that make that decision. Councillor McGowan, yes, we have got hotel accommodation in the city at the moment.
Do we have any say? We've got some new accommodation that you've just talked about.
Yes.
Regency House.
Regency House, yeah.
Who says who goes in there? I'm just thinking if we've got long-term people that's been in a hotel and then new people coming in, going into new buildings. I just wanted it to be fair and equitable, that's all.
Yeah, of course. I think we would all support that view. As Jason said, it's at the discretion of the Home Office, and the routing as to who goes where is also at the discretion of the Home Office. So what they try to do is we have dispersed accommodation, which is kind of regular houses on regular streets. We have contingency accommodation, for example, hotels or other similar large-scale accommodation. And then we have initial accommodation, which is what Regency House will be. So in those types, in contingency and initial accommodation in Sheffield, as in other towns and cities in the country, there are family groups living in those types of accommodation, and family groups and single mothers are prioritised for moves out to dispersed accommodation, to regular houses. But again, that is at the discretion of the Home Office rather than ourselves. So we do have family sites in the city. We don't have any say over who gets to move in or out of those sites, but we do work as closely as we can with the Home Office to ask that that routing is fair and equitable, and they are aware of how long individuals or families have been in which accommodation and where, and they do try and prioritise moves out, but it very much is dependent on what dispersed accommodation becomes available and where it becomes available and when. So there's nothing to say that because somebody is resident in a hotel or in a initial accommodation in the city, that they will then move out to dispersed accommodation in the city. We do know there are situations where people move from hotel to hotel or town to town. So there's nothing that says because they come to Sheffield via one route, they will remain here. There is a constant turnover.
Thank you. Councillor Hooper.
Yeah, thanks Jason, yeah, and thanks Beth, yeah. First-hand experience at West Ecclesfield with Stone Drop Lodge. They are children, family, parents, mums. As it's been said, the Home Office dictated that they were coming. Unfortunately, they didn't consult local councillors first. They said they're coming. They did meet with us eventually. Thanks, Beth, yeah. But these people aren't, I think there's two categories, and I think we need to distinguish between them. The one that's seeking asylum seekers here, the 1,300 people, and the people in the hotels. These people and families will more than likely be moved on. So they come temporary accommodation, and as things happen, they will be moved on, and other families will come. They're mainly from Middle East, and there's language difficulties and all that. But today, they've not been an issue in our area. They come and go. The only issue with our area up there is they're a bit isolated. They're up at High Green. So any facilities, they will have to travel to town, or the facilities will have to be offered into them. So it's, but I think we need to be clear that there's two different types here. But they do move families on, yeah. Very few of them speak English. Yeah, so there are English lessons going on. But because they sort of transition to moving on, it's very difficult. And it's the Home Office that move them on. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Could you turn your mic off, please, Jason? Thank you. Councillor Little.
Yes, quite a straightforward question. What is the relationship between this council and the Home Office? Can it be improved? Can that communication be improved? It just feels we've outsourced the people who we have been told in that the tabloids are illegal, and which they are absolutely not. And so it's very important we take care of these people. So what is that relationship? Can it be improved? Can some sort of formal talks be held with them so that we are actually put in the picture, rather than we've just heard people just plonked in our communities without the supporting community around them that they need?
Thank you, Councillor Little. In terms of what is the relationship, I don't think the relationship with the Home Office has broken down on any level. That would be my view. We have regular dialogue where we need to with the Home Office, and we've got opportunities to raise concerns. And as councillors have alluded to today, the Home Office have been on Microsoft Teams. They haven't come to the city, but they've agreed to meet and discuss issues where they've been raised by local councillors and others. So myself and actually more so Beth are in regular dialogue with the Home Office. So I would say that we've got a relationship with the Home Office. The issue is, as has been discussed today, is that the City Council don't make the decisions ultimately. Those decisions don't lie with the City Council in terms of housing asylum seekers in the city. They sit with the Home Office, and we're very much a party to that in that discussion, but we don't make the ultimate decision. But I wouldn't say that the relationship has broken down on any level. We have got a relationship and we have regular discussions. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Wilson.
Just to add that, Jason, the Staindrop Lodge is due for a 6-month review, so we're waiting for that. So, yeah, it's not broken down, but it's there. So we're going to review sometime, hopefully, before Christmas. Thank you.
Councillor Wilson.
Thank you. Thank you for the report, Jason. And can I just ask a really basic, practical question? The Home Office is, from what I understand it, funding the accommodation, whether we agree with where it is or not. So in terms of what we are actually using this funding for, my understanding is it's to help people integrate, to learn English, to support education, to support health. Can you sort of give me some practical examples of what we're using it for? And can you then tell me maybe what's missing? And what can we do to get that right? Because some of these people are incredibly vulnerable. And should we as a council be pressing to get this increased or changed?
Thank you, Councillor. I think it's important to say that you're absolutely right about the funding for the accommodation is provided by the Home Office, but what we do as a council is, through myself and other statutory colleagues in the organisation, we do make sure that we are appraised regularly through the Home Office and through their accommodation support provider, MEAS, who are responsible for day-to-day running of all the asylum accommodation in Sheffield. We do work closely with them to make sure that if there are any health issues, any safeguarding risks, any environmental protection risks, adults or children's social care need involvement, we do make sure that as much as we can as an authority, we are there to provide the statutory support that we are able to and that is needed for, as you say, some of the most vulnerable people. Beyond that, we don't have day-to-day particular interaction with this cohort of people, but our colleagues in the voluntary sector do. And this money is used, it's a very broad funding instruction, but very specifically, and I'll quote the wording, it must be used to implement and or bolster services for this cohort. So working with our colleagues in the voluntary and community sector, that is exactly what we'll make sure happens. The beauty of that is that we can not only use this money for the benefit to highlight as some of the services that you've talked about, but also the knock-on impact will benefit all sanctuary groups in the city. So people seeking people who've gained refugee status or people seeking sanctuary through other routes as well will also benefit from improved services. Working with colleagues who work with refugees, both in the organisation and externally, and other sanctuary groups, we're doing a piece of work citywide to have a look at what services we currently have, what's working well, identify where there might be gaps, and also thinking about in the longer term what aspirations we have for this group of people and what aspirations we hold as a city for people who are seeking sanctuary with us, in terms of education, in terms of skills, in terms of bringing the skills that they have, because I think it's really easy to forget that many of these people have left good jobs, good homes, through circumstances that are beyond their control. They are bringing a lot of skills and capabilities to us. It's a case of working out if there's a language barrier, if there's an equivalence that they need to do, how we best support them to play the role that they want to play in our community and to integrate into our community. So working, as I say, with colleagues both internally and across the city, we're looking to identify what we've got that's working well, where the gaps might be, and also working with people seeking sanctuary to understand more about what they have, what they need, what their aspirations are, what their aspirations for their families, their children are, so that as a city we have more of a holistic approach and a 5-year or 10-year aspiration for how we can best support this group of people and how therefore we can best deploy this funding opportunity, which we're not sure if it will continue. To come to the second part of your question, we're not sure if it will continue after this year. This is a blanket amount that the Home Office have allocated to all asylum dispersal. And as we are waiting with Ukraine to find out if that will be a continuing programme, we so wait with this as well to find out if this money will be continued into the new financial year. And at that point, that's when we would have a discussion about whether that's the right amount of money, because I think that's a whole other question.
Yeah. So thanks, Ben. And just to add to that, I think just to point out that this is the first time that the city's received a grant for this purpose. Previously, we didn't receive anything at all. There was smaller pots of grant aid that we paid to voluntary sector organisations that supported asylum seekers in the city, but effectively this is far more than we've ever received before. But I think it's correct in terms of Beth's analogy there, in that this is the first time we've received it. We know that that we can always spend more, but we need to do that work moving forward. And I guess that's kind of what we're asking the committee to endorse, really, is that you endorse us to spend this money in the correct way, as we've suggested in the recommendations for this cohort in the city. But beyond that, beyond the end of this next financial year, and next financial year with the staffing, it's a little bit foggy.
Thank you. I'm afraid I've just thought of a supplementary. Among these refugees, asylum seekers, there will be some unaccompanied minors. Is any of this funding either available? Would it be appropriate to use that in particular to support them, thinking about the demands on our children's social care services? I haven't actually done the numbers, I haven't looked at the numbers, but it might just be a drop in the ocean, but is some of that funding available to help us in particular support those unaccompanied minors?
Thank you, Councillor. I think we would need to have a think about the numbers, because my understanding is that the numbers of unaccompanied minors we get in the city are tiny. Thankfully, that's not something that is causing a significant issue in the city, but I certainly will take that back. I'm quite happy to come back to the committee about that and look at what that means in practice and what resource we might need for that purpose where it's an issue.
Thank you. I'm conscious of time. We had two further members have indicated they'd like to speak. I'll close down the discussion after that. So first, could I have Councillor Elliott, please?
Yeah. I just want to say I'm really proud that Sheffield's a city sanctuary, and I know that the organisations in this field are doing amazing work. So just a quick question really, have the partner organisations given specific endorsement for recommendation 1 to enable the council to have like a strong leadership in this area by funding the posts?
Thank you. I'm quoting the words of City of Sanctuary in that paper for that purpose. Particularly, we work very, very closely with City of Sanctuary as the umbrella organisation. Also, as you'll be aware, they do a lot of specific work with people seeking asylum, as do Voluntary Action Sheffield through the Spring Project with people newly granted status. So this is... those organisations, I'm sure if you spoke to them directly, they would verify that. These organisations feel this is strategically extremely important for the city through the council to hold that position of strong leadership and really bringing together the organisations across the city for there to be a focal point of city agreement about how we best work together for the benefit of this vulnerable group.
Thank you, thanks for that. I do have a specific question as well, and I'm not sure if this is the place to ask it, but it was just regarding, because of the knock-on effect of new arrivals, I know that MEAs have been evicting people with less than 28 days notice, and I think that stemmed from the fact that the 28-day notice period isn't being adhered to because we're not working from the date they've had the leave to remain status, we're working from the date that MEAs have sent the letter. And that's having an impact on homelessness. I just wondered if that's something, I mean, you could answer either now or in writing.
I've actually spoken to colleagues in that service only this week because one of the things that we have done in the past sort of 12, 18 months is really build our relationship with MEAs so that we get, as an organisation, advance notice of what are called discontinuations when people are going to be asked to leave, to try and manage that flow through and make sure people are directed to support so that they don't end up statutorily homeless. I can come back to the committee with numbers affected, but my understanding from speaking to a colleague this week who deals directly is that that's not, it's something they're aware of, and it's not something that has impacted significantly, but they are very well aware of that and are working with colleagues in MEAs to address that and prevent homelessness through that route. But I'm quite happy to come back with further information.
Thank you. And finally, Councillor Belbin, and welcome to our committee. Nice to see you.
Thank you. I do think this would be a good opportunity just to thank and acknowledge the organisations, the voluntary organisations that are providing such a lot of support for asylum seekers in our city, especially because a lot of them, as you've referred to there, it's actually people who have been through that system themselves who are doing the volunteering and supporting newly arrived people into the country. So we owe them a huge debt of thanks, and I think they do a magnificent job. I wanted to follow on from Councillor Elliott's question about MEAs, because I do feel that MEAs let down the side a little bit when it comes to the reporting I hear back from some of those, some of the projects, and that's creating more work actually for those voluntary sector organisations when MEAs are commissioned to carry out the work. And amongst the problems I hear about, the fact that they're supposed to provide full-time workers to support the accommodation, but quite often the workers are actually part-time, that they're putting male workers into female accommodation. When there's no MEA staff available, that means people are either having to look to the security guards, sometimes in those places, who aren't actually trained to give the right kind of support, and some of the communications issues that you've referred to as well. So people are arriving and there's just no notice being given, and sometimes with people with really quite substantial needs are turning up and the support isn't ready for them. And I think if, we do need to try and resist putting that extra pressure on both your teams, I assume, and on those voluntary sector organisations. So I wonder what we can do to make sure that this is more joined up and to make MEAs a bit more accountable as an organisation.
Thank you, Councillor. Yeah, I guess the immediate answer I can give to that is that we do meet on a regular basis with MEAs as well as the Home Office. So we've got know, Beth more so than myself have got regular contacts, and those regular discussions are had where we have concerns or issues that are raised. So we do have a regular meeting, we have a regular forum where we have that conversation about services that mayors are providing and improvements if they're required, etc. We also receive regular reports from mayors about the status of the actual accommodation, and without getting into the detail, there's information on there about incidents that have occurred at the hotel accommodation, for example, and what they've done about that and how they've resolved it, etc. So we do have a kind of two-way dialogue with mayors. That said, though, as with everything, it could always be improved, I guess, and so I suppose the best answer is that I'll give the commitment to the committee that obviously will continue with that dialogue to work with mayors and improve the services as much as we can.
Okay, thank you very much. In that case, we've had a lot of good questions and comments. And yeah, I think Sheffield should be proud of its City of Sanctuary status. If we can go to the vote now, the recommendation that has been read out, but I'll read it again, that the Communities, Parks and Leisure Committee, 1, endorses the use of the Asylum Dispersal Grant and Asylum Dispersal Funding to be utilised and detailed in this report with the purpose of A, providing funding for the continuation of the current Communities, Asylum and Migration Team function to continue beyond March 2023. B, supporting identified partners to provide strategically important, good quality services known to benefit those seeking asylum and sanctuary. And C, provide an open grant pot for bids from a broad range of organisations working for the benefit of the asylum and refugee community. And 2, approves the council acting as an accountable body for this purpose. Are we all agreed? Councillor Lee, are you? Yeah. Okay, that's unanimous, and thank you. We'll take item 13 now, please. But again, looking at the clock, can I ask permission that we possibly extend for half an hour, if you could agree to that, please? Is that agreed? Okay. Last time that got us through the last hour very quickly, so hopefully we will again. Item 13 is proposal for 2024-25 allotment rents. And the officers are Ruth Bell and Rowan. Thank you. Rowan Longhurst. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm here to talk you through the proposed rents for the allotment service for 2024-25. We do come for a formal decision every year, and previously it's been the Cabinet Lead and now this committee. The Council has a statutory duty to provide allotments, and we provide nearly 3,500 lettable plots across the city. That's across approximately 70 sites. Rents are reviewed on an annual basis in line with inflation as a result of what we learned from our consultation with tenants in 2018. They are reviewed a year in advance. That means the rents for 2023-24 next year are already set. The allotment service is almost entirely funded by rents. We come for a formal decision, and the purpose of the report is to propose that the rents are increased by 5.5% for 2024-25, which protects the delivery of the service to a degree, whilst taking account of the results of our consultation. I hope you've all been able to read the report, so I won't go into the detail thoroughly, but I'll just give you an overview. So, in line with this pre-existing policy, of a rental increase in line with inflation, we originally proposed an increase of 9.4% in June, which is typically the time we present to the allotment advisory group. This is to enable us to prepare the relevant communications with tenants and seek the appropriate approvals. It's fair to say in June the advisory group was not unanimous. Some supported the proposal of 9.4%, others did not, and we absolutely received some questions and queries from some of the representatives, including the Allotment Federation. We felt it was absolutely appropriate to seek consultation with our wider allotment community, and in recognition of this split opinion and the cost of living crisis, we decided to complete a quick and simple online questionnaire on citizen space. Fair to say that paper copies were available. We wanted to seek the opinions of our wider tenants, which is approximately 3,000. This approach deviates from our standard policy, but like I've said, we felt it was really important to seek that wider consultation, and we were really pleased with the level of response we got from the wider allotment community. Just over 900 people responded. 30% supported an inflationary increase of 9.4%, 43% wanted to see a rent freeze, and 27% supported an increase of less than the 9.4%. And like I say, we're really pleased that this level of engagement was achieved from our tenants, and the majority of our sites, approximately 70 sites, we heard some views from. We felt that a compromise was to raise the rents by 5.5%, which is a rise of between 40p and £10.5p annually, depending on the size of plot and provision of water. It's worth pointing out that we do have a generous concessionary rate, 75% rent reductions, and currently 41% of our tenants access this. Unfortunately, our allotment manager wasn't able to join us today, but I'd welcome further questions, and if there's anything further that I can't answer, I'll be pleased to respond to you. Thank you.
Do we have any questions? Councillor Little.
Is this recommendation compliant with Section 10 of the 1950 Allotment Act, which is inflation-driven? But when you consider that energy costs are the main item of pushing inflation, actually the allotment service isn't a high user of energy. So is this sort of fair? So there's two questions there, really.
Yeah, thank you. The legal advice that we've sought on the proposed increase is that it's absolutely in line with our statutory duty. I think it's fair to say that we have wider service costs whilst the plots themselves aren't incurring the energy costs that you've described. The wider costs that we're seeing as a service absolutely will result in an impact and a wider cost to the service. So the wider allotment office and the service that we provide is impacted by the inflationary areas that you've described.
I mean, I'm I'm very disappointed really that this has had to happen. We've got a cost of living crisis, and traditionally the use of allotments is the place where people in the past used to go to supplement low incomes. It seems that this is an excellent time to be providing that a good quality, affordable service, and we're not able to do that for a large number of people where people will be excluded. You know, many allotments you need to have a car to get to an allotment, for example. So there's lots of thinking that could be done, but I feel that that's not possible with this approach. Thank you.
Do you want a further response on that? I mean, just to reiterate that 41% of people that access our allotments do seek the up to 75% discount on their allotment, so they already receive a very, very reduced rate. And the amount that we're proposing, the maximum increase on the largest plot, which I believe is 300 metres squared, including water, is £10.05. So we have sought to reduce the amount that we are increasing it by far less than inflation, which, as we say, would have been 9.4% had we applied it in the way that we normally do every single year.
Thank you. I'm just aware but I am also aware there's within the report here and the pages here, there was a request, could the rent be spread out of monthly, there'll be a standing order. And I understand that that's been refused as it's complicated and makes it difficult for accounts to do this. Could that not be looked at again, please?
Absolutely. Let me take that away and see whether I can get you an answer on that. An up-to-date answer. We have explored it in the past, but it's absolutely worth asking the question again.
Thank you. Councillor Hooper.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you very much for the report. And thanks for the members of the society coming in and speaking with us today and taking the time out. Thank you. Just a few questions. Parson Cross 1 and Parson Cross 2 historically paying much less rent. Is there a reason for that? And moving on from that, there's nothing in the report that says the total number of allotments, if you could provide that, the number of vacant allotments, the number of requests for allotments from new tenants. And I would also state that in this particular time, with the fruit prices, the allotments are invaluable to lots of people. You mentioned the mental and physical aspects, and then there's economic aspects, but there's also the social aspects as well of people meeting together on allotment sites. So thank you very much. If you can't provide those figures now, if you could let us know, please. Yeah, thank you.
Is it all right if we come back to you? Is that okay?
Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Lee.
Can you tell me which groups of people get the concessions, and when does it start, and when do you expect people to pay the full amount? And just also, how many, it's self-funding, the service is self-funding, so how many staff, how many officers have we got to cover the whole of Sheffield?
So the 75% concessionary rate, I have a list taken from our website, which is widely available. So that's for those in receipt of universal credit, income support, housing benefit, council tax support, job seekers allowance, working tax credit with NHS credit exemption, employment and support allowance, disability allowance, PIP attendance allowance, disabled persons bus pass, blue badge, severe disablement allowance, industrial injuries disablement benefit, medical exemption certificate, pension credit guarantee, war disablement pension, carers allowance. There's also a 25% concession for full-time students and a 25% age-related concession that could be claimed by tenants who reach state pension age on or before the 1st of April.
What does that mean in practical terms?
So we have an allotment manager, business support officers and 2 allotment officers. The FTE is, I think, 3.5. But I'll have to check that with the team. I can get back to you on the full-time equivalent headcount. Yeah, let me get back to you.
You have a point, Lisa.
Thanks, Chair. I was just wondering whether the committee would appreciate a report, an informative report about the allotment service, just bearing in mind the questions that have been asked that would cover, for instance, the plots, where they are, where they're vacant, the turnaround time, staff and so on. If that would be beneficial, we could prepare that short summary for you and bring it back.
I think that would be a really good idea, thank you. Is this, I know you indicated to ask a question, is this the same point or is this an extra point?
These are I've got 3 extra questions that arise from the minutes of the meeting of the allotment advisory group, and I'm fascinated to hear what the response is to them. One is, as a result of rent increases, we see a lot of tenants using the allotments in the city. Where is the point where we get too little income from allotments to make the service that we're providing viable? Because I understand that the allotment service is self-funding. So that's my first question.
Can I suggest that we respond to that question in the report that we're going to bring? Is that all right?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. My second... My second point is in the minutes of the advisory group, they're asking that banners on particular allotments are used to display that there are vacancies on that site. Is there any problem with doing that at the moment?
We haven't, we have had banners prepared for the sites where we do have some vacancies, and I haven't heard of any issues there. Certainly the waiting list re-registration, which was just sent to tenants in the last couple of weeks, explicitly mentioned in the sites where we had vacancies to try and encourage those who were on waiting lists for other sites to take up a site. I must admit it's under 50 vacancies we have across sort of 3,500 plots, so there aren't many, and they tend to be just on a couple of sites. But we are doing everything we can to encourage people to take up a plot on those sites whilst they might they hold their waiting list position on the sites they prefer.
Well, thank you for that response, but I'm just aware, having, I walk regularly through allotment sites in the city, and there seem to be a lot of sites that are underused and they're vacant plots. And when people are desperate for allotments, bring that up with me. I find that, it's quite difficult to get my head around that, really, to understand what that is about. Supplementary question to that one.
So what I'm more than happy to do is prepare a summary of the sites that have vacancies. There are some quite complex reasons behind some of the vacancies on those sites, but it will give you the detail of why they might seem to be unused, particularly when there's demand. And they're quite complex on some sites, but happy to provide that summary.
Right, thank you.
To add to what Rowan said as well, what we'll include in the report as well is the inspection regime for the allotment. So they may appear underused, the allotments are inspected and they have to be cultivated, and they're in the terms of the agreement. I'm not going to pretend that my knowledge extends beyond that, but if we include that in the report as well, so we can give an understanding of they may look unused, but they're actually let or something like that.
I think that would be really good, but I do feel like the members of the public who may be interested it needs to be as clear as possible that that's going on. So my third question is, I would like it's talking about burning on sites, and would it be possible to get a report on pollution from open fires, as it were? I understand that it's quite a shocking story of the amount of pollution you get from an open fire compared with, say, burning gas. I would like somebody, very knowledgeable to, say, come to this committee and talk to that, because the polluting effects are considerable.
Can I suggest, again, we bring it as part of that report, because there has actually been some work done recently where they've been measuring air quality levels around, I think it's Gleadless Valley area, with regard to burning on allotments, and we do have the first lot of information back from those tests. So yeah, we can absolutely bring it as part of that report.
Thank you very much. That's the end of my question.
Just to add to that, the results of those air quality monitoring surveys is an item on our next advisory group next month. We have had those studies carried out, and colleagues from Environmental Services sort of analyse and comprehend. We've invited them to come to our next advisory group meeting to explain that in layman's terms for the benefit of most of us, so we can share both the report, the minutes and the supplementary detail that they present to the advisory group in December. Just one other point on the unused sites. I think it's really important to lead on from Lisa's comment that we are very conscious, particularly in the last couple of years, that people's circumstances have been really challenging. As a result of COVID, lots of people haven't been able to attend their allotment. They were shielding, or they've been through some really difficult times. So as a service, we've tried to strike a very difficult balance of being very, very understanding and accommodating on almost absolutely a case-by-case basis. So whilst we absolutely appreciate that for people who are sat on the waiting list, it's frustrating to see plots seemingly overgrown,
the details and the nuances behind individual circumstances and why that might be is it can be quite complicated. So we also recognise that as time goes on, we have to return to a perhaps firmer and less lenient approach to those appeals, because if we're not seeing allotments worked, then it's not fair on those on sites and waiting for sites. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, and thank you for your questions, Bernard. On that basis, I'd like to move. Oh, final question from Councillor Alston.
Sorry, this is very quick. I think having a report would be useful. I'm looking back at the public questions we were asked earlier, and one of them was about who is responsible for setting policy. I'm assuming that actually going forward, it is this committee, albeit with the input of the allotments advisory group. Obviously, previous decisions will have been made by cabinet members, and therefore I think that report that you're proposing is very important. In order for us to understand the budget better, I think we need more information about the amount of money that's spent and the amount of money that's used and where the income comes from. So how much would the rent have to be, for example, if there were no discounts? I'm not saying there shouldn't be discounts, but I think it's a useful way of comparing, so we understand what these discounts are and where the money's coming from and what it's used for. Thank you.
Good question to finish with, thank you. We'll go to the vote. The recommendation is 1, that the rent for allotments in 2024-25 is increased by 5.5%, and 2, that this increase is at a below inflation increase for 2024-25 only due to the current cost of living crisis. Are we all agreed? That is unanimous. Thank you very much. Thank you for your report. If I've got my maths correct, we're now back on to item 11, which is play zone funding application, site selection and community engagement approach. And this will be presented by Kate Clark. Thank you, Kate.
Hello everyone, my name is Kate Clark and I'm the Service Manager for Physical Activity, Sport and Health in the Sport, Leisure and Health team. The purpose of the report I've brought today is to seek approval for the site selection and community engagement approach for the Play Zones funding programme, which we're currently preparing a grant application. Just to give a little bit of background, the Play Zones Fund was launched by the Football Foundation earlier this year, and it provides funding with investment from Sport England, the Premier League and FA, which aims to tackle inequalities in physical activity by creating safe, inclusive outdoor sport and facilities, which bring communities together through football, recreational football and other sports. So it's a multi-sports approach, not just looking at football, but also a number of other sports, including basketball, cricket, netball, and rugby and hockey. The fund has a number of target groups, which include women and girls, ethnically diverse communities, lower socio-economic groups, and disabled people and those with long-term health conditions. The Sheffield City Council submitted an expression of interest in June 2022, and we were successful with this, and we've now been invited to put in a full grant application, which the report says is for February 2022, but we've just been informed by the Football Foundation that that grant application is due to go in April 2023, sorry. So that's what we're currently working towards. We've been given a £25,000 development grant to enable us to bring additional staff resources in to develop that grant, and some key areas that we need to work on over the coming months are an approach to site selection, so we can identify priority sites to put into the programme, and also a community engagement approach. The funding gives us an opportunity to refurbish multi-use games courts across the city, and also, in a small number of cases, to create new multi-use games areas in areas where we may have gaps, across the city. Because the funding has some key criteria, we've developed a site selection kind of scoring approach to enable us to prioritise those sites, as we have quite a number of multi-use games areas across the city, and some of those won't fit the criteria or be able to meet the requirements of the Football Foundation funding. So just to give a quick overview of those funding criteria, we need to target the groups that I've previously mentioned. There's a number of design requirements, including fencing those sites and putting lighting in where possible. They also require that the sites are bookable, at least to some extent, so to enable us to meet those target groups and make sure they have access to such sessions, we would need to make some sessions bookable. This can be part of a mixed approach, so we still maintain free play on those sites as well as some bookable sessions. The funding also requires that we create an activation plan for each site, and that we have a number of community partners in place that would be able to deliver an activation programme to ensure that the target groups are brought in to use those sites, and also that they are used in future once they're constructed. A key criteria is that we have 25% match funding across the programme. We've identified a number of funds that will be available towards this, including Section 106 for certain sites, public health funding, and local community infrastructure funding will be available in some areas. The final thing that is required by the Football Foundation is either freehold ownership or a 10-year lease on those sites. So, as we've got a number of criteria we need to meet, and also we need to make sure we carry out community engagement, we've created a site selection scoring criteria that includes site suitability, so that's making sure things meet the requirements of the Football Foundation, community need, so looking at public health data, inequalities in physical activity across the city, which we have from our previous sport and leisure strategy consultation, also looking at consultation that Parks and Countryside have done, and previous consultation through the sport and leisure strategy consultation, and local area committees, and also looking at mapping and gap analysis. Obviously, we need to look at funding availability across the programme. Where sites have high kind of need in terms of community need and demand, and enable us to meet the target groups, if there is a shortfall in funding on a particular site, we would still consider this, and we would look across the programme. As long as we can provide a 25% funding across the programme, that may mean that some sites have more or less match funding. Supporting target groups will be a key part of the scoring criteria, and where sites have the ability to meet a number of the different target groups, that will be taken into account as part of the scoring. Where we have multi-sports partnerships that enable us to deliver those activation plans, that will be a key scoring criteria. And the community engagement feedback that we gather as part of this grant application process, where there's strong community demand and positive support for the play zones criteria, those sites will score higher. I think it's important to say that as part of this approach, we are working as a consortium, which is another requirement of the Football Foundation. So that consortium is led by Sheffield City Council Sport, Leisure and Health team, alongside colleagues from Parks and Countryside, but it includes a number of partners from national sporting governing bodies, Yorkshire Sport Foundation, our Move More network across the city, Yorkshire Cricket Foundation, the county, Hallamshire and Sheffield County FA, and also the Sheffield United Community Foundation and Sheffield Wednesday Community Foundation. So that consortium of partners is working together to develop the grant application, and that will go in from the consortium. In terms of the community engagement approach, we'll have a kind of four-tiered approach. The top of that tier is obviously the consortium partners, engaging with those as part of the grant application process. We'll also be working with key anchor organisations across the city, such as the People Keeping Well network and the Move More network, and they'll be particularly important in carrying out some of our community engagement, particularly with target groups and reaching those communities where there may be language barriers or other barriers to talking to those people. We'll also look at a tier which is called kind of grassroots organisations across the city. So that might be people working in particular communities, already organisations there who can provide us links into other networks within those communities. and also site-based and hyper-local consultations, so very close to those sites that we are looking at to get community feedback, both from site users and those people in the communities not using those sites as well. So the engagement will be carried out by Sheffield City Council, our consortium partners and the anchor organisations. And at the start of that process, we aim to come and talk to local area committee and members to get insight on the local area and sites as well. In terms of the recommendations of the report today, we were asking that the Communities, Parks and Leisure Committee approves the proposed approach to both site selection and community engagement as set out in the report. We also have got a number of kind of things to note for the committee, which includes the consortium approach to develop the funding application, and the fact that the final list of sites will be brought back to committee when we've carried out the community engagement and site selection work. And also to note that if secured, the capital funding will be approved through the Strategy and Resources Committee. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Kate, and thank you also for an incredibly detailed report. Thank you. A number of people have indicated they'd like to speak. Councillor Hooper, please.
Thanks very much, Kate. Yeah, I think last time when you came, I mentioned hockey and provision of hockey in Sheffield. I believe that now Westfield are the only place where we've got artificial pitch that is suitable for hockey. Chapeltown Hockey Club currently have been using Darfield in Barnsley. It's 14 miles to Darfield or 14 miles to Westfield across the city. There is move within the National Hockey Association or whatever, national, because they realise the issue with the 2-3G pitches, and they're looking actually to change the ball that will make the pitches more suitable. So if you could just bear that in mind when you're looking at the sites. But yeah, there's a dearth of pitches in the north. The other thing with Darfield is that the changing facilities are very poor. There's virtually none, just the toilets which they have to provide. But to get to Westfield from there, it's a 14-mile trip there, 14-mile trip back. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks. Yeah, just to respond to that, we are aware of the issue around hockey, and that came through strongly in the Sport and Leisure Strategy consultation as well, and we are having ongoing discussions around that, and obviously linked to the playing pitch strategy as well, looking to protect and identify sites for future use.
Councillor McGann.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you for a detailed report. Good bedtime reading. Yeah, I just wonder, I don't know if I've missed it, but when does the consultation start that you was talking about? And when will you have the list of the sites, and when will you be sharing? So it's great that it's going to come to the local area committees, and great that we're going to be all involved in it. I just wanted to know when, you know, so we can see. I'm South East Chair, so I'd just love to see how many are in the South East and where they are and what it means.
In terms of the process, we were expecting to be working to a February 23 deadline for application, but now it's April 23, which gives us a little bit more time. So I think the team's made initial contact with the LAC managers this last week around coming to briefings. So I think the first part of that will be to come to LAC briefings and get some insight from local members and discuss some of those sites in areas. And then I'd anticipate kind of the first few months of 2023 we'll be carrying out community engagement on the ground and bringing a report back probably kind of March time before we put that in, but we can provide I'll kind of discuss with the team, because it's only last week we've had the news that it's the April deadline, so we're just looking at the timelines again at the moment. Okay.
Thank you. Councillor Little.
Yes, two questions. Your consultation. Have you, will you be consulting the Green Spaces Forum and like friends of local parks and nature groups?
Yeah, part of the process we're going through at the moment is identifying all the groups we want to consult at each of those different tiers. So certainly, one of the reasons for coming to the local area committees as well is to identify groups that we might not already have on our list that we might want to talk to, but certainly parks obviously have, and we're working very closely with parks on this, have all those kind of links with the friends groups and the Green Spaces Forum, so that can form part of the community engagement approach overall.
And my second question is about provision of cycle provision at each of these sites, secure cycling, bike storage, as it were, because many young people often have to go out and cycle quite a distance to a football pitch, as it were, to play and then cycle back home again. I think it will increase the engagement.
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly something that will be looked at as kind of part of the wider site infrastructure. We hope that by kind of looking at our mapping of facilities and being able to provide a number across the city, we'll be able to provide kind of local facilities that people can travel to by walking and cycling. And one of the things that we can look at, particularly on those sites where we're that are part of our kind of active park sites, where we've got a lot of other kind of planned improvements, as well as making sure we've got those sorts of things like cycle parking in place. Yeah, I don't know if you want to say anything else about that. Anyone in parks?
Yeah, well, just kind of reiterate what Kate's saying there. I think it's really important that we do.
Could you get to the mics so that people can hear you?
That we do have cycle provision at key hub sites across the city, and we are kind of developing our approaches to ensure that we have a kind of using play zones as part of a kind of a whole collection of facilities that support engagement with a whole range of different ages and abilities on a particular site. And I think having the cycle facilities as part of that, the recreational offer within the site, is really important, and obviously with that, the cycle storage.
Thank you.
Councillor Bowen.
Yes, thank you very much for the presentation. I think we have 5 out of 7 local area committee chairs here, so you've probably started the job of consulting with them already. But I just wanted to say I do think that's really important. I do note in the paper you talk a little bit about the dangers of consultation fatigue, and I do worry about that a little bit, because I think in a lot of our local area committees around our parks and so on, we have been, trying to do consultation and trying to engage with local people. I am just a little bit worried that it'll be not another consultation, and what happens as a result of that. So I think it would be really valuable to start talking as soon as possible to people in those areas about what is already taking place in terms of consultation and how you might be able to fit in alongside it, rather than trying to do it multiple times. Thank you.
Yeah, I think just to kind of add from that, as well as the community engagement approach we carry out, we'll also take into account site-specific surveys that Parks and Countryside may also already have carried out, findings from our sport and leisure strategy consultation that we carried out earlier in 2022, and findings from the LAC consultation earlier this year as well, and any priorities within your local community plans that would feed into that. So yeah, we're obviously conscious of that as well, so thank you.
Councillor Price.
Thanks. I noticed when you mentioned the partnerships included the professional football club. Is there any attempt to bring in the professional basketball team, the Sharks and the ice hockey team, and their community links and the importance of that, Chair?
We do have Sheffield Sharks. Sorry, I didn't mention everybody on the consortium, but Sheffield Sharks have attended our initial consortium meetings, and we're kind of looking to make sure that there is kind of representation across all those sports.
And a final question from Councillor Little.
Yes, concern about lighting from football, from sports events, and the impact on nature. Animals and birds need they fit in with their life, and their ability to lay eggs and reproduce is affected by the amount of light that they have, and also the way predatory animals and creatures interact is impacted by the amount of light that's around them, as it were. So I'd like to know that there's going to be a effective screening of those lights, so that that impact doesn't happen.
Yeah, thank you. One of the first things the team's doing at the moment as part of the site suitability assessment is to have a look and have a discussion with planning about issues on particular sites where we think there might be those sorts of things, and what could be put in place. We're also talking to the Football Foundation as well about their criteria at the moment. It's very clear that they would like all sites lit, but we feel there may be some sites that will potentially be very high community need that we would like to do, but may not be suitable for lighting given in the issues you raise and also proximity to housing. So those discussions are ongoing as well. So there may be a possibility to do some without lighting as well.
You want a question?
One very quick one. In the site selection criteria, there's quite a few references to activating, like an activation plan. Does that put the onus on the community organisation to develop that with the council? It's something that we're working with a number of partners, so the national governing bodies and also some of the community sports foundations and organisations like Sheffield United Community Foundation and Sheffield Wednesday Community Foundation, who carry out those sorts of kind of activities across the city already. So we're working with them to understand where they'd be able to support those activation plans, but where there's other community organisations that might want to put on sessions and get involved in those, then we'll be talking to those people as well.
Okay, thank you very much. And again, thank you for your report. I'd like to move to the vote and the recommendation. I read it again, that the Communities, Parks and Leisure Committee, 1, approve the proposed approach to site selection as set out in this report, community engagement outlined in the report, and 2, notes the proposed consortium approach to the development of the funding application. A final list of sites will be reported to the Communities, Parks and Leisure Committee. And finally, and if secured, any capital funding associated with this funding will be presented to the Strategy and Resources Committee for approval. Is that agreed? That's unanimous. Thank you. Thank you again. Okay, we have item 12, which is an update on sport, leisure and entertainment commissioning. And this will be presented by Tammy Barris.
Thank you. I'm Tammy Barris, Head of Sport, Leisure and Health at the Council. So this report is an update to a previous decision that was taken by the Co-op exec in November 2021. Although there's delegations within that report to officers around a procurement strategy, I think it's important that this committee are kept up to date with how that work is progressing. It's a significant piece of work for the Council, so I wanted to bring a report by way of an update to today's meeting. So over recent months we've started conversations with potential providers. As you know, our current arrangements with Sheffield City Trust come to an end in September 2024. So we've started to approach the market to see what appetite and interest there are for those facilities ongoing. So to date we've had some really positive feedback that's given us the confidence that there is an appetite out there for management of our facilities. We plan to do further soft market testing to shape our procurement strategy, but those initial reports back are that there's a lot of positive feedback from potential providers. We think that we are likely to put the facilities out in 2 lots. So the first lot being sport and leisure, sport and leisure, including golf, and then a second lot which will be entertainment facilities, which is the arena and City Hall. So all of those facilities are currently managed by the City Trust, but actually what the market are telling us is that there are specialist operators for entertainment and there are specialist operators for sport and leisure, and they don't tend to mix in those 2 markets. So we're looking at an approach with 2 separate lots. We did consider splitting out golf and having a golf only lot. Response to that was pretty weak. We didn't get a lot of response back from golf only providers, and intelligence from other areas that are currently running a separate lot for golf and sport and leisure tells us that they've had a weak response. I think one of the other local authority areas has only had 1 golf bid back, and I think what we think is for the amount of effort and work involved in splitting that out to then get a very poor market response, it's probably better to keep it together and keep the costs down for both the council and for potential bidders. We've appointed some specialist advice and support to help us with this work. So we've got a company called IPW who specialise in the entertainment and events industry working with us, and also SLC who were a sport and leisure consultancy who supported us with the original leisure review. So we've got lots of knowledge, industry best practice that we're feeding into this from lots of sort of national and also international and global on the entertainment front from the arena specialists. We plan to use the Sport England model contract, so that's seen as best practice across the sport and leisure industry. There'll be specific requirements that the council have, so we'll look at that and make sure that it reflects what we want in Sheffield for Sheffield City Council, but we'll use that as the kind of a basis for the sport and leisure contract. We'll also build into that lessons from our experiences with Places Leisure, so we use that contract at the moment for Graves, Thorncliffe and Wisewood, and I think we've had positive experiences to date, so we'll look to build on that working with colleagues in legal services to further develop that. We'll also be building on the specification for services that we've currently got in place, but putting in any specific requirements around the sites that are currently managed by Sheffield City Trust. We ran a procurement exercise in 2015, I think it was, so we'll build on our experiences from that as part of building that specification. We are doing some work, I think it's important to say, to test our original financial assumptions, because we did that work back in 2020 and 2021. Things have moved on a little bit. We want to make sure that what we're planning to do remains affordable for the council in the current climate. We don't expect that work to impact on our decision to procure a new operator from 2024, but it may have some implications on the rate of recovery for any investment, given that there's been inflationary increases, energy cost rises, pay increases, etc. In respect to running the services. So, as I've said, we've begun work to develop the specification for services, and we'll use Sport England's template documentation to plan and work towards that. We also want to include a series of social outcomes. So, as part of that work and alongside the standard contract, we will put in social outcomes, and that will form part of the scoring methodology for us selecting an operator. So the social outcome elements, which are the things that I'm keen to seek member sort of feedback on, are around concessionary pricing. So we'll be looking to include a concessionary pricing scheme, and there's specific information in Appendix 1 of the report of the types of benefits, etc., that give the eligibility for that. We've done some benchmarking with other core cities, and I think it's fair to say that it's complex. The arrangements for concessionary discounts vary significantly, from some people offering 50% for certain activities to other areas that offer nothing. In Sheffield, we've got our discount set currently at 30%. Sheffield City Trust offer 40% for some of their discounts. I think we'll set a minimum of 30. It'll be one of the things bidders will be priced against, and we'll ask them to come up with solutions in terms of what they can offer. We'll ask them to tell us about their experience and success and what they've done in other areas as part of that process for bidding. There are also environmental aspects around the social outcomes, so we'll be looking for things like a reduction in waste produced as part of the contract, so a commitment to zero waste, to landfill and zero landfill waste contract, agreeing an annual waste management strategy. There are other things once we start to build and develop this that we can look at as well, like use of plastic cups, etc., having water refill stations in facilities. We also want to reduce the carbon footprint of our buildings, and we'll be looking to work with providers on reducing consumption on an annual basis of gas, electricity and water. We'll also want them to implement green travel plans, both for their staff and users of the site, and look at ways. Oh, sorry, I thought my mic went off then. We'll also be looking at secure cycle parking at facilities as part of that, and as part of encouraging people to travel greener. We also want to offer some support around providing local people with skills. So we'll be looking at things like increasing school leavers into employment. So I'm really keen to make sure that providers develop links with schools and special schools and further and higher education places to involve schools and arrange apprenticeships, etc. We want to support young people into work, delivering things like mock interviews on site, giving young people information and feedback on what skills are available through the leisure sector. It's not always something that people would think to go into, but if you look at some of the senior managers across leisure and people who've built a really good career, they might have started off you know, in sixth form or doing their A-levels as a lifeguard and have actually built a really good career through the leisure sector. So I think if we can get into schools and provide that information, that will be really helpful. We want to work with people that are not in education and training and offer support and potential access to job opportunities through our providers. These are big employers within our city. We've got a number of venues across the city, and I think we've got a good opportunity to start to build that relationship with the provider and implement some of these arrangements. We also want to work with youth services and develop an annual physical activity development plan, look at specific marketing campaigns to engage young people, particularly targeted at teenagers, where we know often that's the age that kids start to drop off attending activities and engaging with things. How can we keep kids or encourage young people to continue to engage and work with us? And I think part of that is not just about talking to users, it's getting out there into communities and talking to people who don't use the facilities at all, and see what can be done either within facility or as part of an outreach programme to do work within local communities. And then that brings me on to the final section, which is about a community outreach programme. So the consultation that we did, that Kate referenced earlier, I think told us that not everybody wants to visit a leisure centre. Some people might want to exercise in their local park, they might want to go to a community building or a community facility. And we want to work with whoever's running our leisure centres to make sure that we've got a good community outreach programme that works outside of the leisure centres as well as within those four walls. We also want to make sure that they run things like community open days, giving taster sessions, etc. Within the leisure centres, because sometimes getting people through the door that first time is really difficult. Once people are in there and feel familiar and have built that confidence, you're much more likely to get ongoing engagement. We also want to have user and non-user consultation, specifically including more vulnerable groups, and also to do and develop non-user forums and customer user forums so that we get a range of different views and feedback from across our communities. So if members have any questions, I'd be happy to answer. Otherwise, if you could note the content of the report and the envisaged approach to procurement, including the inclusion of the social outcomes that I've just briefly run through. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that presentation, Tammy. One thing I noticed, you asked for member feedback on a whole range of different issues. Can that be done outside this meeting? Because we'll be here all night otherwise. Can we restrict ourselves to specific questions that you have now that Tammy can answer now, please?
One very brief comment just on page 111, which is about promoting the scheme for concessionary, concessions. Absolutely, there's no point having it unless we really do promote it, so I'm glad that's in there. My question is actually around point 5 on 115. Can you just explain to me what those other alternative options are? Because I don't quite understand it, I'm sorry.
Sorry, Sue, which section specifically? I don't know if I've got the same page numbers as you on my printout.
Bullet point 5.
Okay, so when we looked at going out to procure an operator for the facilities, we also looked at a number of alternative arrangements. So one of those was developing a local authority trading company. So we looked at the arrangements if we add an arm's length company to the council running the services, and we also looked at bringing the services back in-house. So that forms part of the report that went in November 2021. So there's a lot of detail in that report, so if you have an opportunity to have a look back over it, but they were two alternative options that we looked at, and for affordability and other reasons, we agreed that the external procurement and an external partner was the best option. So that's the way that we're moving forward in the basis of the report today.
Okay, so they've basically been looked at previous meetings and events. Sorry, I've obviously not engaged with that.
Councillor McGowan.
Yeah, it's more of a comment, and I'm sure you'll be expecting it from me to do a plug for golf, seeing that keeps falling into, it's in my ward. But it is just to say it's an expensive sport to get into, and an encouragement for young people. We've had some good results in Sheffield around golf, and it's just to encourage that. And I know there's been a lot of comparisons and emails that we've sent around about other cities and what they charge, and it's just to bear all that in mind, really.
Councillor Little.
Yes, several questions. What does IPW stand for? That's point 1.5. Who are the? Is this somebody you've appointed? Who's IPW?
It is, yes. So IPW are an entertainment specialist. So they do just use those three letters. I have asked what it stands for, and it's in partnership with.
Right.
So, but the organisation that we refer to is IPW.
They don't refer to them in partnership with, they are called IPW.
Okay. So I've got lots of questions, and I think I will do what Richard suggested. I'll write them down, separately. But thank you very much for the tour round of the leisure facilities in the city. It was a very enjoyable 2 days, and I got to see things that I've never seen before, because I can't afford to go to them, basically. I'm too busy, but fantastic. My question is, I mean, thing I noticed was the amount of car parking spaces at these places. Yeah, I understand that that's where we are at the moment, but bearing in mind we've got to get to net zero carbon emissions by 2030. That is going to be incredibly challenging. So my questions that I'm going to ask through in written questions to you will be around that. Thank you.
Councillor Lou.
Thanks. I absolutely understand the relationship we have with places for sport and how that works, and how will it work with the entertainment side of this, you know, with City Hall and the arena, and given that the difference in profit, those two organisations?
Okay, so we're just working through that at the moment with IPW and looking at, we've got to weigh up, because obviously there's having control, and there's maximising the commercial input and the financial return for those facilities for the City Hall and the arena. I think we probably will go for a hybrid approach where we'll have some form of lease arrangement and some form of management arrangement, but we're not completely decided on that yet, Mary. That's something that, it's one of the reasons we've got IPW in, so they're looking at industry best practice, what's happening nationally in terms of the entertainment market, but it will be different to the sport and leisure. We don't have a specification in the same way that we would have for sport and leisure, but there will still be sort of parameters that we would want to put in place across the entertainment venues.
Can I just add to that as well? I'm not sure if this is what you meant, but also with the 30-year financial model that we've developed for the leisure review, we've also made some assumptions about income into the entertainment side and income into the sport and leisure side as well. So those assumptions have been made based on what the industry experts are telling us. Because I think at the moment that the income that we receive, or that Sheffield City Trust receive from the arena and City Hall is substantive, and that actually underwrites some of the sport and leisure facilities. So those assumptions have been taken into account on that long-term financial basis, so we know what's going to be coming into which facility.
Can I just add slightly to that as well? I think part of this as well will be linked back to the risk that the council wants to take. So how much do we want financial certainty, or how much are we willing to accept some risk on the income? Do we want to absolutely set a management fee, or do we want to have a limit and then a profit share arrangement, for example? So they're all the kinds of things that we're working through at the moment to inform the future procurement strategy. But we've not taken a firm decision on that at this point. It's something that we're still working through with the support of IPW.
Just a couple more. One is about investment from the operator, any future operator. And I know when places came in, they invested in Wisewood. Would that be something that is in discussions? We will form part of the discussion, so that's one question. And just, you know, I think Sue mentioned concessions. I think they are there. Obviously, those concessions are there at the moment. I just wonder sometimes how widely they are known in the communities that people have these concessions, unless we actively promote it constantly, really. And I do mean it has to be done constantly rather than, you know, every now and again.
Yeah. So on the investment, we'll absolutely. Sorry.
Did you want an answer tonight, or was it a question about the concessions?
It's a point about concessions that we do need to promote that widely.
And just very quickly on the investment point, we will definitely be asking the question if bidders will come with any investment if they want to put in a variant bid, as Places did on their previous application.
A final question from Peter.
Just an observation, really, Chair. I hope we don't forget the importance of team sports and competition and the development of talent in all this bid to get the community involvement. If we're going to grow young people and get on to developing their particular sports, we do need to understand that these teams require leagues and places to play, and we won't push them out in the other consideration. That's all, Chair.
Just ask one more question. Where does Ponsforge come in? Is this? It's a biggie, isn't it? It's yeah. So I just wondered. Well, apart from the competition, it's a massive building. And there was discussions about all sorts of things that could be used. We could use that building for, apart from what it is used for at the moment.
So it will sit in sport and leisure, but obviously there are opportunities for Ponsforge. There's a huge area on the side of Ponsforge where the sports halls are, for example. So we will be looking at that as part of this, but in terms of this procurement, it'll sit with sport and leisure as part of the procurement exercise.
We know that we need to treat it as a special case within that sport and leisure for the reasons that Peter's just highlighted. We've got this elite facility that's got community offer in it as well, but also it costs a lot of money to run, and it's balancing that with the rest of the facilities and the outdoor spaces as well. So it's going to sit in the sport and leisure, but we're going to do a specific kind of study on what the opportunities are for Ponds Forge.
I think obviously that's good, because we've got all those developments down at Castlegate. We've got 20,000 people now living in the city, or will be very shortly, and we know that there's lots of things we can do with that space.
Right, thank you, and thank you for your update, Tammy. We should go to the vote now. The recommendation is that members of the Communities, Parks and Leisure Committee note the content of the report, including the envisaged approach to procurement and the inclusion of social outcome requirements within the specification of the services. Are we all agreed? Thank you. That is unanimous. Thank you very much. We now have item 14, Revenue Budget Monitoring Report, and thank you for your patience.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ryan Keyworth. I'm the Council's Director of Finance and Commercial Services. I'll just give a brief introduction to the report, and then I'm obviously happy to take any questions that members have. So at month 6, the Council overall is reporting a forecast overspend for the year of £18.6 million. That's a slight improvement on the previous month's report and previous reports that have been to this committee. Much of the monitoring report is actually quite repetitious, as is always the case with a year-to-date report that's presented frequently throughout the year. So I'm not going to really go into any of the detail on that for the Council overall, but I'm obviously happy to take questions. Specific to this committee, a small underspend. I noticed a slight inconsistency in the report. The actual number is 461,000, so somewhere the roundings have gone awry. Two principal reasons for this, really. One is Page Hall, an expenditure on the work that's going on there, which is likely to be the subject of a carry-forward request come the end of this financial year, and some timing underspend in youth services, essentially linked to the recruitment of staff in those areas. So given that this committee, broadly speaking, on budget, there's not a great deal more for me to report to the committee chair, but obviously I'm happy to take any questions that you all members have.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions? Councillor Little.
Yes, I know. Thank you for your report. Thank you very much. I just look at climate implications and note, it's just an observation really, 4.4, it is expected that individual committees will continue climate implications as they develop their budget proposals in due course. My concern is, are we getting the expert support that we need to actually be able to do this? Because it is a huge commitment. But we all need to look at it more carefully. Thank you.
So the Council does now have a process in place by which all decisions that are decisions require climate implications to be assessed. The budget proposals that are being developed as part of the 23-24 budget will require climate implications to be completed, just as they require equalities implications to be completed, as they have done, as I'm sure you're aware, for many years now. The Council's team that supports that work is small, but it has recently been increased in size, so it's bigger today than it was 12 months ago.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? No, well, thank you for that. What I'm going to suggest is that when we draw up the agenda next time, that it seems pretty logical for you to be waiting all afternoon for a short, concise report.
I'm also here for the next item, which has some confidential stuff in it, and to be quite honest with the committee, it's useful catch-up time for me in a quiet corner, so I don't mind in the slightest. Thank you though for thinking of me.
You're welcome. Okay, the recommendation is to note the Council's financial position at the end of September 2022, month 6. Are we duly noted? That looks fairly unanimous. Thank you. Item 10 is a budget position for the next year, 2023-24. As I said earlier, it will be in two parts. This is the open report for Ryan to do.
Yeah, perhaps, Chair, I'll start and give a general introduction, and then we'll move into the specific. What I'd really like to do is to keep as much of the discussion as possible, as always, in public. If there are questions that members have that we feel are straying into some of the confidential items on the paper, then we might just flag that to you, Chair, and either defer to a confidential section of the meeting, or we'll try and do what we can to keep it public. So, what members have in the pack today is a council-wide overview, which I'll speak to briefly, and then the confidential section, which details the specific savings that the committee has been asked to endorse at this stage in the process. The report to Strategy and Resources that went in October showed that around 60 million of savings and income generation opportunities have been identified against a target of about 80 million. So some significant work being done by this committee and other committees, and for that, please accept my thanks for the work done. There is a little bit more to do, no doubt about it. The Strategy and Resources Committee meeting on the 5th of December will receive a report detailing where we've got to by that point, and really the savings that are capable of being agreed politically at that stage. In September, this committee noted a list of savings. It was not asked to approve them or give any kind of political approval for those savings. That's the work that's now going on. So work is in progress with members and with political groups to firm up the proposals that were put forward in the September cycle of policy committee meetings and then reported to Strategy and Resources in October. The way the timing of this is worked out means it is quite possible that this committee will not see the final set of savings before it goes to Strategy and Resources, and quite possible, and there's probably a need for a report to this committee, I think, in the January cycle of meetings to confirm the savings that will be reported through and proposed through to full council. So the appendix that you've got in front of you today, which is the confidential section, does contain the items relevant to this committee that have received broad political support. That means support from all three political groups. There's work in progress, as I said, to work through the savings that have not yet received broad political support, to understand whether that's an issue of there's no chance of these savings receiving political support, or whether it's a question of clarification or modification of savings so that that's possible. I'm happy to take questions on what I've said so far. I've got a sneaking feeling if we go into much more detail, we're going to end up in the confidential section of the report. Over to you, Chair.
Thank you, Ryan. Yeah, note your point. Does anybody have any specific questions on what you've heard so far? That looks like a no. So in that case, I think the protocol is to move into closed session. Yeah. So could we pause the webcam? And this is the closed session part of the report of item 10. It's an appendix, which is not available to the public and press because it contains exempt information described in paragraph 3 of Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972 as amended, relating to financial and business affairs. The committee are therefore now asked to formally exclude the public and press for the discussion on this item to allow for consideration of the sensitive information. Okay, very quickly, the recommendation for this committee is to note the update of the Council's 23-24 budget position and endorse the budget proposals set out in Appendix 1. Is that agreed? That is unanimous. Thank you very much. That concludes our meeting. Thank you for all your time, effort, patience, and your questions. Thank you.